How'd you like to listen to .NET Rocks with no ads? Easy. Become a patron. For just $5 a month, you get access to a private RSS feed where all the shows have no ads. $20 a month will get you that and a special .NET Rocks patron mug. Sign up now at patreon.netrocks.com. Hey, Carl and Richard here with your 2024 NDC schedule.
We'll be at as many NDC conferences as possible this year, and you should consider attending no matter what.
NDC Oslo is happening June 10th through the 14th. Get your tickets at ndcoslo.com.
The Copenhagen Developers Festival happens August 26th through the 30th. Early bird discount ends April 26th. Tickets at cphdevfest.com.
NDC Porto is happening October 14th through the 18th. The early bird discount ends June 14th. Tickets at ndcporto.com.
And we'll see you there, we hope.
Hey, welcome back to .NET Rocks. I'm Carl Franklin.
And I'm Richard Campbell.
We are gearing up for some stuff here, are we not? There's definitely some stuff.
The conference season's coming on again, right? Like we have a little here, there, and yon. It's spring.
Right. You have an announcement about Dev Intersection, do you not?
Oh, yes. Dev Intersection got moved. We were supposed to be the second week of May, and now we're down in the second week of September.
Yeah.
So we had some opportunities there and to do some more announcement related things. So it was like, hey, if we could just move it to September, and we were able to make a deal with the MGM Grand. So ta-da. I know it's frustrating for a few folks. We've been trying to help everyone else to be comfortable and make it reasonable and fair. But yeah, what it does to the content stack, you're going to be really excited.
Yeah.
I'm glad we were able to do this. So
it'll be a much better show in the fall.
I think so. And so devintersection.com.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's roll the crazy music for Better Know Framework.
Awesome.
All
right, man. What do you got?
All right. This one came from AppV Next alumni.
Those troublemakers, Brian McKay, who's always looking for new AI stuff, as you know. So this is an AI enabled or empowered command terminal called Warp. Go to warp.dev. Great URL. Holy man.
How about that, huh?
Yeah.
Warp.dev. And so it says Warp is the terminal reimagined with AI and collaborative tools for better productivity. And it doesn't exist yet. You have to join the Windows waitlist.
Oh, I see.
Of course, if you're on Windows. But just gander for a few seconds at what they're doing there in the terminal. It's like an animated GIF or a little video or something.
Yeah, I just wonder how real is that? Like I can make cool text spew out, but I have to go on the wait list.
Yep. And get this. Built with Rust.
Well, Rusinovich approves, It's a pretty low-level language, It sort of straddles the line, a little more safer than C++, but still that kind of performance. So
I'm laughing because Rust is making the news. Every once in a while, I see news stories that Microsoft is not abandoning C# for Rust. You heard it here first. Because there was some... there was just some rumors and stuff that...
No. There were some C# services in Azure that were being rewritten in Rust.
Yeah.
Because you think about it from Microsoft's perspective, those services, the less compute they consume, the less it costs Microsoft to operate them.
Right. We should be thanking them.
Well, they could have rewritten them in C++, but it would just cost more.
Right.
So they rewrite them in Rust.
And it just goes to show you there's a language for everything out there, right?
Yeah. And for macro, super scale cloud stuff where you can see utilization so high that every cycle counts, that's worth doing a rewrite like that.
It's just funny how people react. Oh my God, C# is going away.
Yeah, there's not one language for a
exactly.
reason.
All right, well, that's what I got. Warp.dev, and check it out at warp speed on your own time. Now back to you, Richard, who's talking to us.
Grabbed a comment off of show 1892, pretty recent, the one we did with Michelle Duke, talking about GitHub Copilot. I think we're having a little AI conversation today.
Yeah.
And so, GitHub Copilot is sort of the original for devs. And Aaron Morgan wrote a bit of a missive. I'm not going to hold that against you, Aaron, because I thought it was very intelligent. But he said, I really enjoyed this episode. Michelle's great as always, and I love the call out to JetBrains Rider, as it's often not mentioned when Microsoft Stack is being discussed. I got nothing bad to say about JetBrains or Rider. They're great. A large part of my work satisfaction comes from creating a solution from whole cloth and figuring out the problems as I go. I'm not a developer because it pays well, but the fun of it, the challenge of it. Prompting an AI to generate my vision doesn't have the same appeal, although I'm sure it would to my employer since it means faster delivery. Mm-hmm. I feel like more time to be creative argument is a bit of a crock. No employer is going to say, great work, I completed that piece of work early. Now think creatively on something else for the next week. Instead, it'll be, here's the next task, get on with it. I do pay for GPT-4 and have basically used it as a drop-in replacement for Stack Overflow. I've heard that before.
Yeah. Yep.
Also, as I'm not great with complex SQL queries, and the ability to describe tables to get a full query back is a massive time saver. Mm-hmm. I also use Svelte, and to Karl's point, I know just not to ask for anything on Svelte because its knowledge of the project of 2021 is largely of no use to me today.
Yep.
But I sit here having refactored a JavaScript function that I couldn't find the solution to using Google. After dropping in the function signature, GPT said that I needed to use a type alias and gave an example. So I've learned what a type alias is in TypeScript. The code is tidier and more maintainable, and I don't feel like I didn't code the method. I think this is the crux of it. I enjoy learning new development things, and this aspect of work being diminished with AI auto prompting. Yeah, I don't see how it was diminished at all. I think you had a very polite rubber duck helping you there.
Yeah, well, the problem comes when ChatGPT offers solutions that are old, right? Yeah. And you go and you look, and I just did this the other day. It offered a solution, and I went and I checked it out, checked out the NuGet packages that it suggested, and they've been deprecated. And so I said, hey, these packages have been deprecated. Is there anything else? And it's like, oh, yes, more modern design would use this, you know?
Right. Why didn't you offer
okay, why didn't you tell me that in the first place, you idiot?
So Aaron wraps up with, I want to use AI like a pod of nearby coworkers that don't mind being interrupted. Beautiful description. Yeah. But I don't want to use AI like I'm a project manager directing a team of devs who'll do my bidding, but ultimately remain disconnected from the process of development. I feel like, in the long run, AI coding will be a bit of a Pyrrhic victory to the personal satisfaction and sense of fulfillment we get from working as software engineers. I don't know. In the end, I was trying to get to the solution too. I'm not opposed to Power Apps for the same reason. A lot of people go, "Oh my God, no code! Are you crazy?" It's like, I'm just trying to deliver results, man.
Right,
that's what's important.
Yep.
So, Aaron, thank you so much for your comment. A copy of Music to Code By is on its way to you. And if you'd like a copy of Music to Code By, write a comment on the website at .netrocks.com or on the Facebooks. We publish every show there. And if you comment there and I read it on the show, we'll send you a copy of Music to Code By.
And we definitely like to see you on Twitter. Of course, we've been there for a long time, or X or whatever it is today. But the real cool kids are hanging out on Mastodon. I'm at Karl Franklin at techhub.social.
And I'm Rich Campbell at mastodon.social.
And of course, you can find all the ways you can contact me at karlfranklin.com. Okay, let's get to our guest today. Really excited to have Karl Geitz on. He is a freelance software architect and developer, owner of Kobasoft GmbH. Hey, Karl, is there an acronym way to say that? Do you say GmbH or do you just say GmbH?
No, GmbH.
Okay. Like we say Inc. for incorporated or sure. LLC. All right. So that's at kobasoft.net, Kobasoft.net, building advanced applications for their clients with C#, SQL, and web technologies. He has been working for Microsoft, Siemens, Carl Zeiss Microscopy, banks, and industry. His main topics are C#, web standards, generators, performance, and accessibility. He's currently working on an IoT project with sensor data, flexible calculations, and the ClickHouse database, and a large in-house application for an industrial client with ASP.NET, SQL Server, CRM, document management, product planning, materials, and management. He's author of Kobasoft Log, a fast and easy-to-use logging library, and Log Viewer, and he's using NaturallySpeaking intensely. He's been since 2002. Welcome, Karl.
Yes, hello.
And you're a longtime .NET Rocks listener, are you not?
Yes, it's about 2006. I started programming with C# about 2002, 2003.
Wow.
And later I discovered your podcast and then enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, and the kind of things that you're into, you're kind of a generalist, it looks like. You're all over the map. You do a lot of things.
Yes.
Yeah, very cool. So we're talking about AI in speech and all of that stuff. And it says you've been using Dragon Naturally Speaking, which, isn't, I don't know if it'd be considered AI, but it's certainly, been around a long time and did a really, really good job. And I guess still does. Does Naturally Speaking use, AI on the back end now?
Yes, it is. There are two versions. There is the desktop version and the cloud version. Mm-hmm. And the cloud version is AI based, but it is more an AI targeted to voice recognition. It's not like a ChatGPT. It's just to improve the quality.
Right.
Remember that story I told of the African gray parrot named Timmy that we wired up with the X10? That was a Dragon Naturally Speaking board in the 90s on
hardware.
DOS.
A hardware
Very
board.
Good.
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah, so he doesn't know that story, but basically Richard had a parrot with his friends, and they taught it to, shut the blinds and turn on the TV with the Naturally Speaking.
Turn off on its own lights. So, you just wanted to let the parrot have control of the environment. We just didn't know the parrot liked to go to bed early. He'd shut everything off at like 7. And if you try to turn it back on, he'd turn it back off again.
I remember you saying he used to do the car alarm.
Oh, yeah. No, he did car alarms perfectly, because it didn't matter what time of the day or night. If he did the car alarm, you got up.
Yeah.
Very cool. So,
Timmy.
Yeah, you could do the same with Naturally Speaking. You could do your house automation and connect devices to it and so on, because it's programmable. So
yeah.
So you use Naturally Speaking because it's the best thing that has been out there, or you've been using it a long time, or both?
Both, yes. I had an RSI a long time ago, say about 2004, and then I started using speech input. Mm-hmm. I later solved this problem, but speech input proved to be very helpful to me. And so, as you know, you can use it for basic dictation, but it is also possible to use it for programming, for example. And this is what I do in a lot. I'm using it together, like, for example, ChatGPT. Say I've got my ChatGPT window here open, and instead of typing all the long prompts, I can just dictate the prompts.
Right.
And so it's way faster. It's more like communication. Yes, I tell it something, press enter, it responds. You could even let it read the response, but I'm not using it. It would take longer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we can read faster than we can listen, right?
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah.
So interestingly, Mark Miller spent the weekend at my house this last weekend, and he was showing me something he's going to show off at Build in CodeRush, which is basically speech commands. Like, you hold down the control key, you tell Visual Studio what you want to do, and it does it. And you can there's even macros to write code and things like that. It's just unbelievable.
I've heard about this, but Naturally Speaking is much more flexible. You can use it for any application. So you could control Windows or text processing or even Visual Studio or whatever you like. And so I've got a lot of commands, like thousands or so, and I can control nearly everything. Like when I'm using Visual Studio, I can say, okay, build solution, and it will just build my solution.
Yeah.
And so on. Or if I want to insert a statement, if statement, I say the appropriate command, and it will just type it. And it doesn't matter if it's 1 line or 100 lines. So.
So are you actually speaking code, or are you giving commands to Studio?
Both. It's completely flexible. Say, the simplest use would be to just write documentation. Say, I've got a summary header above my method, and I would just dictate the summary instead of typing it out with my hands, and it's way faster. It's really as fast as we are talking right now.
Probably write longer comments that way.
Yes, exactly.
Because the other side of this is you're also effectively manifesting what you're going to code by describing it.
Yeah, exactly.
I got a question about microphones. I noticed that you're using like a dictation kind of microphone with the mic comes over to your mouth headset. But I have an Amazon Echo here, and it's been pretty good about being able to pick up things across the room. You can even whisper to it. And I never had that experience with any Windows-based kind of, just using a regular microphone. Do you think that there's like stuff in there to cancel noise and, figure out exactly what, I mean, that's the thing that's great about Echo. Do you always use this headset, or have you found other microphones that work with ambience, like an ambient microphone?
I think it's exactly as you say. So Amazon Alexa will have some noise cancelling and additional tools to improve the noise quality. But the big difference is that Alexa has to listen to, say, hundreds of words. Mm-hmm. And the naturally speaking vocabulary is about hundreds of thousands of words.
Sure.
So there's a much bigger risk for errors. So it's easy to confuse a personal name with a standard word and so on.
And I've noticed the same thing with Echo.
Yeah.
You ask it a question and it gives you an answer based on something you didn't even say.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it answers enthusiastically.
Oh, yeah.
Incorrectly. And
it won't stop. I brought it into the house and Kelly got used to it. But after a while, when I say A, she starts with A, I give it the keyword, and then stop to stop talking. Kelly says, shut up. And it works.
But I mean, herein lies the real issue. I find watching voice systems being used in general. People don't mind it if it works the first time. But as soon as it doesn't work the first time, then they feel dumb using it, so they don't want to use it anymore.
Yeah, you're right. This was the case like 10 years ago or 15 years ago. When you started dictation, you really had to, this is my next sentence. You had to be very exact on your pronunciation and gaps between the words. Nowadays, it's just like talking. It would normally transcribe what we are saying now. You can just record it and it would transcribe the text. And so
they've actually changed the underlying model in Naturally Speaking to use the more contemporary libraries.
Yeah, nearly every version. Say, whenever you get a new version from 12 to 13 or 14, 15, 16, it always improves the recognition quality.
Because I remember having to train a Dragon board back in the day. And then, that just sort of went away almost a decade ago when you think about Siri and so forth, like, training was no longer needed.
Yeah, you're right.
Windows Speech wants you to train it to speak the paragraphs and stuff. And all of these things now that are cloud-based, like even Google speech recognition is great. I mean, it just uses the cloud.
Yeah.
But, and it doesn't require training. Do you have a keyword that you say, like when I use the Amazon Echo, or do you just press a particular button when you want to give a command?
No, it's normally it's turned on when I'm working. So I have a special keyboard button, but it's really you can define any button as this button. So I've got a keyboard button. When I press it, it will turn on the microphone, and then when it's running, you can say, "Okay, microphone off," and then it's off, and you have to press the button again. Or you can say, "Okay, go to sleep." Then it will continue listening. You say, "Okay, wake up." Then it will come back again. So it's more or less like you say. But when I'm really working, it's turned on all the time.
Are you worried that somebody's going to like barge into the room and say, order 5,000 pounds of cement from Amazon?
It doesn't have this kind of connection. It just would type it out.
Has that ever happened to you though? Has somebody like gotten in the room and tried to screw everything up for you as a joke?
No, once I made a big error. I dictated in English a German text. And this was very bad.
Oh, that must have been interesting.
And I pressed enter without checking it. Okay, but I will never do it again.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
There's another aspect of this that appeals to me, which is that Visual Studio is a difficult application to navigate. It's like the cockpit of a 747 in there. And a number of times I know it can do this thing. I just can't find the menu item. Mm-hmm. So the idea that I could say this is what I want to do, and the speech control system that can navigate the tool for me, that's very compelling. Like that's just a ton of time saved rather than flailing around in menus.
Yeah, that's exactly the point. I would say, okay, synchronize class view, and it would pop up the class view for the current class or method. Mm-hmm. And similar stuff. Okay, show Solution Explorer. It would show the Solution Explorer. Or debugging locals, it would show the debugging locals window. So it's like I wrote it in my email. It's like a third hand. Right. I keep my right hand on the mouse and the left hand on the function keys, for example, and all the typing would be done by Naturally Speaking.
The voice. Yeah. Where did those hooks come from? Did you do that, or was that already available?
it depends on what you're doing. Say, if you were a writer and would write a book, you would have thousands of commands already available. Like make that bold or make that italic and go to the top, go to the bottom, select next word. All of this is predefined and it's working fine in, let's say, Microsoft Word and WordPad. But when you're having specific programs like, let's say, Visual Studio, you have to define your own commands. There are no pre-built commands. But on the other hand, it's very easy to do. It's like a huge shortcut manager. You can write or dictate a command name, and then, for example, you assign keystrokes, and it will just repeat the keystrokes. But it's a little bit advanced, so you can say, okay, press Alt-A, then wait half a second, then press Charlie, and so on. So it's like a huge keystroke macro manager, but you don't have to remember any keystrokes for triggering it. You just say the command.
Right. Once you've done it once.
Have you ever had the situation where a new version of Visual Studio remaps keystrokes or changes them?
I've got my own mapping, which I usually keep, but it's easy to adapt. It's matter of seconds you have adapted it.
So you don't find that managing NaturallySpeaking takes more time than you think it should?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Wow.
It's there's a command browser. You can see all the commands. Basically, you've got two lists of commands. You've got the built-in commands, and there's a browser for these, and you've got your own commands, and there's also a browser, and it's very easy to manage.
I bet with Copilot, this makes a killer combination, right? Because now you can just speak a comment, and then Copilot will actually write the code, and you don't have to sit there going, for each, blah, 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 right?
Yeah, but for each statements are a macro for me. I just say, okay, state for each, and it will insert the complete for each statement. And that's with other stuff as well. So like if statements or standard HTML markup or any of these stuff I've got on a command.
But your macros don't know anything about the code that you're writing, but the Copilot does.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. So are you finding yourself using Copilot with NaturallySpeaking more now?
Say when Copilot presents a solution to me, I have to think about his suggestions. And normally it takes more time than to just write it down. Because
Really?
I'm very fast. I'm doing this for many years now.
Do you have any videos of yourself writing code with NaturallySpeaking that we can see?
I don't have any yet.
I'm really, my interest is piqued here.
I could create one.
Wow. Okay. Well, if you create one, we'll put a link to it in the show notes.
Okay.
This is fascinating.
It's just, like you said, one hand on the function keys, one hand on the mouse, and all the text, you're just saying it.
Yeah.
So it's, you literally have a separate tool now to keep things moving so your hands aren't bouncing back and forth.
Yeah, and it's much faster. I'm a quite fast typist. I'm not slow. But this thing is still a lot faster. Instead of typing single characters, you get complete words.
Right.
All right. So how would you say use a link statement to pull a variable out from this list where this property value is between this value and that value?
I would more or less dictate it as it's written, like a state variable index equals sign, dictionary, empty brackets, and so on.
Okay. So you really are writing code.
So there is a point where you have to dictate character by character code.
Yes. Depending on what I'm doing, yes.
What about moving the cursor around? Like you've got to go back and change a phrase. I guess that's the mouse's job, is to get the cursor.
But you can still do that with keyboard,
yes.
with up arrow and left arrow and tab. And
yes. I'm using the mouse and the keyboard as usual, but it is possible to control the mouse and the keyboard with NaturallySpeaking. You can say, okay, go left 5. Or say, you want to go 10 lines, go down 10. And so it's easier than pressing the down key 10 times.
For sure, yeah.
So here's another question.
Faster, but not by much.
Yeah.
Here's another question. Do you sell your macro library? Like your mappings?
No.
Would you want to? Because I think people listening to this might want
I wouldn't mind. Yes, sure. Why not?
Now, you're into the accessibility space in general, which is screen readers and like hardware dedicated for folks that have limitations in certain areas. Are you using any of that in your own work?
Yes, I've been using it. I had a RSI many years ago, as I said previously.
Oh, yeah.
And for some time, I really was using NaturallySpeaking to control everything.
Just to save your wrists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I couldn't even shower. It was very bad. And
wow.
So,
you had bad RSI, friend. That's serious. Like, it hurts all the time.
Okay. Can you just explain what RSI is?
Repeated stress injury.
Injuries.
Okay.
So, again, our friend Mark Miller was very big on always wearing the braces to reduce. This is essentially caused by the tendons in your hand abrading against the sheaths in your wrist to the point where they inflame and puff up enough that they burn all the time. It's agonizing.
Wow. So I know as a guitar player, if I write a lot of code, if I'm coding all week, right, and then I go try to play without practicing or warming up, my fingers don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And so, it kind of is appealing to me.
But does it hurt? Like, does it?
No, it doesn't hurt, but they just don't do what you want them to do. Like, they don't move. Your brain isn't used to sending the signals to play a scale. It's used to sending the signals to spell your name or your email address.
It's a very different motion, but and I would argue because you switch between those different motions, your hands are in better shape.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Right. The problem with typing all the time is it's the same motions over and over. It's repetitive.
Yeah. Right.
Plus, there's also a whole conversation about wrist angles and keyboard heights relative to chair heights, like the ergonomics of minimizing stress on your wrists. Because once you go down that inflammation path, forever will it haunt your destiny. Like as soon as your wrists start to be inflamed, everything it gets worse and worse and worse.
Yeah, there are 2 points to it, and you mentioned one of them already. At this time, I had a B12 deficiency, and it was measured in a lab. And so I substituted it, and it improved the situation a lot because B12 goes on all the shares, like nerve, threads, and shares, and it causes inflammation when it's missing. Yeah. And the other point is missing blood flow. So the hands are not exercised enough. It's this repetitive movement, which is always the same, but it doesn't really use the hands. And so the other solution for me was to do some training, heavy weights training. And this helped a lot. It's really helped. It will hurt. Initially, it will hurt naturally because there's an inflammation. But on the long run, it will improve the flow of blood and lymph fluid. And so I don't have this problem anymore.
Physiologically, typing is bizarre.
It is kind of.
Right? To just flex the tendons while not moving the arm almost at all. Like it's your body wasn't built for this. This is crazy. So, I mean, I'm a big Pomodoro fan. Like that 20 minutes, get up, move around and so forth. That's about just making your blood move. Yeah. Right. Arms over your head, arms down, like that. All of that's making blood move, which does not happen when you're hovering over the keyboard. Yeah. The problem is you get in the groove and 4 hours go by.
Yep.
And you're completely happy exactly where you're sitting. The moment you move in any way, you're like, I'm in agony. Like everything hurts.
You get up and you didn't realize your ass hurt that much.
And now I'm struggling to get up, right? And just because you've been in the zone.
Yeah. Are there situations where you're using software apart from Visual Studio, software that you're trying to automate, and there are things that are only menu options or buttons that you have to click? There are no keyboard shortcuts. What do you do in that situation?
If it has no keyboard shortcut at all, it's a little bit harder. But there's a second way. The program can recognize certain screen elements, like, for example, standard buttons or browser buttons and everything. I say all of these are recognized by NaturallySpeaking itself or by its plugins. So when you're in a standard Windows program, you can say, okay, click open, click save, click whatever. And when you're in a browser, there are also commands, for example, to list all links or list all buttons and so on. And then you can say, okay, click 5 or click 1. And so it will navigate. But if it's graphics only application, it becomes very hard.
Right.
Say a game, for example, if there are no standard Windows elements, it's nearly impossible.
Nearly impossible. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting problem. So it's not a solution to everything, but this is also where you get into that accessibility part. Good software has multiple ways to do a given task because different people have different abilities.
Yeah, exactly. And this is what we're doing. you will know semantic markup in HTML. And this is the first step. Then there are all these area tags and other methods to get it accessible. And I've been doing this for some time and know some more experts in this area. And then you get a website which is completely can be navigated by voice. You can read the content. You can navigate everything by voice.
That's cool.
Yeah,
and we've done that show, right? Like we've talked about accessibility on websites. Yeah.
Okay.
Hey guys, let's continue the conversation after this quick break for some very important messages. We'll be right back. And we're back. It's .NET Rocks. I'm Carl Franklin. That's Richard Campbell.
Howdy.
And we're talking to Karl Geitz about doing everything with speech that you can do with your hands. Almost.
I do like the mix. There's some things that are served well by the hands and some things were served well by the voice. Like writing a longer comment, because I can go on and on, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Or writing a book on the history of .NET, for example. That might be a good thing to use.
Maybe that's the answer. I don't know the answer to that.
Absolutely.
Did I say something wrong, Richard? Anyway. So let's talk about some of the practical things that you're using this for within Visual Studio itself. I imagine you've piqued the interest of our listeners, especially those, who might have limited hand movement. So just give us a quick example of something that you mentioned a couple of macros in the way that you set up projects and things, but give us a run through of how you would typically go about programming a new app, a web app, let's say. Like, how do you drag and drop elements from one window to another, for example? What are some of the more challenging things?
Mm-hmm. For drag and drop, I have to use the mouse. So there's nearly no other way. You could control the mouse by voice, but it's very hard to do. It's very slow. And then normally say, when I would start debugging, I would say, okay, debug run. And then it would start debugging. Or I would say, okay, let's say debug breakpoint. And it would set a breakpoint. And then I've got different variations. You might know the F12 tools have different keyboard shortcuts. So I've got different keyboard shortcuts, like for a browser and the development environment.
Yeah.
And that's, say, for running commands. And then when I want to dictate a statement, for example, I would say, okay, state for each. And it would just write the complete for each statement.
Right.
But
you'd have to fill in the values, obviously, for each what,
Yeah, but it's it will normally trigger a snippet, a Visual Studio snippet, and the snippet will place the cursor on the right location. So I'm combining these two. I've got my own snippets, I've got standard snippets, and many times I'm triggering snippets by using voice commands. So I've got one level more flexibility.
And if you're at a breakpoint, can you examine the value of a variable without using your hands?
Normally, I would say, okay, debug locals, and it would show the locals window, or debug inspect. It would show this F9 variables inspection window, and so on.
Wow.
And so, or I've got one debug variables, which would show all like locals, watch, and whatever. It would show multiple windows. And then let's say,
look up this exception value with ChatGPT. Can you do that?
You could.
On Stack Overflow.
I've got such macros.
That's cool.
Say, but I've got a macro, for example, where I can select the text and say, look up that, and it would open the browser and look up this code.
That's cool.
And so I'm saving, say, 20 keystrokes or so.
I swear to God, you could sell this library of macros.
I wouldn't mind. I've been selling shareware before, so that wouldn't be a problem. Say there's one statement like source block. It would select the complete if statement, and the variations would select the if statement and some surrounding statements, or only the inner part of the if statement, and so on. And so I'm saving a lot of time. Sometimes it's like 20 keystrokes or more.
Yeah.
Or like, you're looking for a regular expression. Say this typical regular expression for identifiers, like A to Z 0 to 9 underscore blah blah. And this would be regex expression, regex identifier, and it would select. It would just type it out. And you might notice that I'm using kind of reverse notation. So I say debug run, or it is always reverse. And this is intentionally, so I can find all debugging commands. And by doing this, it's also possible over a remote desktop connection, for example.
Oh, sure.
It doesn't mind, say, I can go to an RDP session, use my same commands as before without any problems.
You don't have to install anything on the RDP,
Exactly.
on the VM.
Yeah.
I think you mentioned this when you're navigating menus, you can just literally read what's on the screen, right? You can say menu file or something like that, and then, like if there isn't a keyboard shortcut, but there's a menu shortcut.
Yes.
You could say file, blah, 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 and whatever you see on the screen, you can read, right? And it will select it.
If it's recognizable, say, there are some Windows accessibility features, and if the target program supports these, you can say, okay, click File, click Open, click Tools, click Settings. This is possible. If it's like a graphics-only application, it's not possible. The program cannot recognize anything.
But most Windows menus usually have a keyboard hotkey associated with it, so you could just say press A, press B, whatever.
Exactly as you say. You could say, okay, press Alt, Control, print screen. This is possible. Press Shift, Control, Enter. It's also possible.
Bring up Notepad, paste video.
Run Notepad. Exactly.
Paste clipboard.
Exactly. I'm always stunned how many times I run Notepad in a given day, still to this day. It's the place that I put things.
You know what I use it for? I use it as a text filter. Like you pull something off of a website, and before you paste it into email, you want to remove all the formatting, and you just
I ASCII you.
ASCII.
I think you would already expect it, but I've got a macro for this.
Yes,
of course you do. Dude, we're going into business, you and me.
Paste text macro, and it would just remove all the garbage. It would paste clean text.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a good.
Wow, cool.
How many times have you copied a URL and found out you don't actually have that URL? You have 15 trackers that'll eventually lead to a URL, perhaps, maybe.
Yeah. All right, let's. We got to go. We got to keep going with your awesome macros here. Tell us some of the other really productivity enhancing macros you have, whether Visual Studio or not.
Let's say I'm also controlling Outlook, and say there are two ways to control other applications. One option is to have a plugin, like for example, there's an Excel plugin or Word plugin or Outlook plugin and so on. The other option is to write your own macros. And so I've got a lot of macros, for example, for Outlook, to switch the text language. Say I'm dictating in, say, 2-3 different languages.
Right.
And so I've got a macro for just switching the languages.
You know how I control Outlook? I use Gmail. That's how.
Okay.
Funny. Did I say that out loud? Yeah. Okay.
Or say I've got templates for the suffix of a letter, the prefix of a letter, all kinds of salutations and so on. So I don't have to type, okay, dear sir or madam. No, I just say it.
Wow.
And it will write it for me. You know, this lorem ipsum text template all the people are using in the web?
Yeah.
I've cut it on a macro, naturally.
Wow. Just filled with bogus text.
Yeah, lorem ipsum. And say I've also got, say, text templates for, say, you want to test an input field if you can fit 100 characters. So I've got templates which create like small ruler from ASCII characters, and it is exactly 100 characters, and you can see if it fits or not. And I've got one for 1,000 characters and so on. And so it's very handy for testing.
Sure.
It allows repetitions, for example. As I told you, you can say, okay, go up 100. But you can also have your own macros repeat. So if you've got one macro and then you can have another one and say, okay, repeat it 20 times, and it would repeat the macro 20 times.
Wow. I'm stunned.
And I can see how you just gradually accumulate these. You write a macro once, and then you get to keep reusing it. So it saves you a lot of work.
A lot of work. You can, because it's basic, it's programmable in the basic language. So it has a very old, very small basic interpreter inside. And you can write all kinds of statements. You can access the clipboard. You can access your last dictation words and so on. So it's very flexible.
Wow.
And so, like I mentioned, I'm also of the Corpussoft logging library. And so when I say, okay, log.verbose, it will insert the log verbose statement. When I say, okay, log.warning, it will insert the warning statement. But only log dot is a fixed part. And the last part is flexible. It's accessing the word I said. And so you have lots of possibilities here. And as I told you, it's like a third hand. I've got my hand on the mouse and the function keys and so on.
Yeah.
And most of the typing is being done by voice.
Just don't have to deal with it. Yeah, no, I say it. I love to see the video because it definitely is a rhythm, of a flow,
right?
To what that would look like.
Yeah, I mentioned flow.
You mentioned the debugger, but where does that end up going? Like, ultimately, I guess you're getting back to a piece of code you need to correct.
Please, I didn't understand the question.
Like I'm just thinking about the debugging workflow is different from the coding workflow. Like you certainly can start the debugger, you set a breakpoint, you run, you drop to the breakpoint. Now you're checking values, maybe tweaking some code and continuing.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, but these are the same statements. I've got lots of, say, 70 or 80 debugging statements, and I'm running them all the time.
Right.
Like looking at variables or showing certain windows and so on. Continuing, breaking, whatever. Set next statement. Okay, but that's a normal process.
Step. No. Okay, that gets old.
No. I've got my fingers on the keyboard and I'm using the function keys for this.
Right.
Yeah. F10, F11.
Step
but
out.
Talking about the flow, say writing a longer comment would get you out of flow when programming. But when you type it, when you say it, when you're talking to the machine, it's way faster.
Sure it is.
And as you mentioned before, it's like talking to myself. I repeat my programming ideas in a different language, meaning a natural human language. And so I can reflect on what I'm writing here. And sometimes I'm doing this very excessively. Say, I've got some WordPad open or Word open, and I write my concepts down by using speech and collect them and arrange them, and then I start writing code. So it's useful on this part too. And what I also can do, all of you know Paint.net, this painting application.
Yeah.
And it's also possible to automate these, like for example, for inserting a picture and so on. All of this is possible by voice commands. Say, many times a day you have to write the current date and time, or say only the date. Like, for example, when opening a Git branch or giving a file name or whatever. It's on a macro. I've got a macro, or say different, say 6 or 8, which insert current date, time in different formats. And then I've got all my personal information like street or address or phone number or whatever. It's also on macros. So when I'm filling out a form, I just don't worry. I've got my street correct, my phone number correct, and so on.
Right.
But there's one point where you have to be careful because, say, you write in an email by voice. There will be no typos because the system will just take the words from its dictionary and insert them. But sometimes it gets the words completely wrong. So the spell checker will not find anything, but it will still be wrong.
Right.
And that's the point where you have to be careful always.
A tool like Grammarly would catch that better than the spell checker will.
Yeah.
So here's a quick question. And I think you touched on this before, but are you more confident about using any website in a browser than if you, for example, download a new Windows application? Now you have to figure out all the keyboard shortcuts. Because it's in the browser, does that help? Like, do you feel more confident going to any site and being able to manipulate it and do what you want to do with NaturallySpeaking than it would be getting a new program?
No, I'm not using NaturallySpeaking a lot for websites.
Okay.
It is possible, but it's, say, for me, it's not necessary. I can use my hands, and so I'm not using it a lot. But what you're saying, it's right. Say, I'm doing a lot of user interface and usability and so on. And I've seen that many people are more confident when using the mouse or touchscreens and so on. So it's easier, just point and click and that's it. It's you don't have to remember any shortcuts. But
that's fair.
Yeah, but in my client base, you clearly see different kinds of users. Some are using the mouse all of the time. And some really want keyboard shortcuts because they want to work fast. And so you can support both. There's no problem at all. You can support keyboard shortcuts, touch, voice input, all at the same time.
And getting back to the Better Know framework, which was the Warp command line thing, I imagine that command line interfaces are a lot easier to use a Dragon interface just because of the nature of, you text in, text out. Easy.
Yeah, you're right.
So PowerShell, maybe?
Yeah, depending on what you're writing. Like, write a pull request in the command line at GitHub with your voice. That's a lot of dashes and
well, macros, right?
Macros.
Yeah.
Macros.
You can create a macro for the data.
You can even have macros with prompts. You could have a base macro and it prompts you in the middle for some argument and it would complete the step.
Yeah, what's the thing you want here?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but I do get it. Things that command line tools that have a lot of arguments like FFmpeg or any kind of Git interface.
Piping and PowerShell.
Piping. Yeah, right. Well, that's why you need a macro. Yeah.
No, but I've got one example where it's really working fine in SQL. SQL is a language which can be spoken very well. So I've got some like SQL select. I've got such a statement which will write out a base SQL select statement. And then I can, SQL from, SQL to, SQL like. And it would just, with very, very high speed, write out the command.
Right.
So, and I used to use the Microsoft SQL commands, this command line utility a lot. And it's, using speech is very, very helpful here.
You talk about that English has a funny order to things, that you want to say debug run, not run debug. And certainly SQL has that problem where really you want the from clause first. You want to tell, these are the tables I want to play with. Then this is what I want to fetch from it. Then here are the filters or the restrictions on what to pull.
Yeah, you got to always write the where clause before the delete clause, right?
Yeah.
Ask me how I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, you're right. You could do the from. You could do the from and the where before you've even decided, am I retrieving data, deleting data, updating data? Like, it's all a separate thing.
We are stuck with this.
You just have to break those pieces apart.
Yeah, we are stuck with this. It's a standard and we have to just get accustomed.
Yes. Yeah. But what's interesting when you think that way is as you get those conditionals in play, it could be querying and telling you how many rows that's going to be all along before you've even actually said, okay, well, now show me this or take this action on that set. But the shape of the set just by describing it.
Yeah, but what I'm using I'll say I've got ChatGPT open most of the time, and it is very good at creating SQL statements.
Nice.
So you can say, okay, I've got this C# class here, and you paste the C# class, and then say, okay, please write the select statement for this C# class.
Nice.
Yeah.
And normally do it without errors. And I'm using the ClickHouse database right now. And here's the same. So I can ask it, okay, give me a create table statement for this C# class. And it will do it normally.
ChatGPT does better with languages other than English, doesn't it? It does. And what I mean is C# programming languages, SQL, it tends to get those things better and more accurately than it does. I mean, of course, the grammar and stuff is fine, but at least it's not trying to mix facts with language.
It's astonishingly good. Say, I asked it today for a DOS command. It got it right. Normally it gets the SQL statements right. Most of the time it gets the C# statements right. And the good thing is it will output, say, you formulate a prompt for the stuff you need and it will output the complete code. I once asked it for some binary encoding stuff. It was very good. I had to work it over, but it was very good.
On the other hand, I was listening to an old Soul Live record today, and the guitar player sounded very familiar. It sounded like John Scofield. And I looked at the name of the tune and I asked ChatGPT, has John Scofield ever played on the Soul Live tune, blah, blah, blah? And said, no, that was the original guitar player, blah, blah, blah. So I looked on Wikipedia. No, I was right.
It was Scofield.
It was
You recognize his hand.
I recognize that sound. So, yeah, that's what I mean. I mean, with English queries, it has to get facts and mix that in with the language. It can give you the wrong answer in a very eloquent and beautiful way. But with programming languages, SQL languages, there's really only one answer.
And the compiler always gets a say, which is pretty useful. I'm thinking now to Aaron's comment as well. Like, is this unsatisfying that you didn't write the query yourself? And I think describing the goal and having the tool assemble the bits, like we've always done this. There's always been a library you're recalling to. I mean, I want you hit this right early on, Karl Franklin, because we have two Karls on the show. Don't make this more difficult. That writing a good comment then you have something like GitHub Copilot. Like half the time, it's going to spew the code from the comment anyway. Is that unsatisfying? I don't think it is. Like, yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Wouldn't be
now
to me.
You go in and tweak it.
For me, this is okay. Why should I write a complete SQL statement when it can do it for me?
Yeah.
It's just, it's like using a manual drill or an electric drill. You want a hole. Yes. And the machine is doing it. So what? It's okay.
It's okay.
The thing that wouldn't be satisfying is if I didn't understand what it was saying, right? If I didn't understand the output. And, that's the thing. Like we all grew up doing these things by hand. We learned how they work. We learned how SQL works. And then when something does it for us, we're delighted because we know exactly what it says. But somebody who just, asks ChatGPT for a SQL statement and they plug it in and it magically works, that's to me would be scary.
It's a risk.
If I didn't know.
There's a lot of discussion going on about the risks of just copy and pasting generated code into programs.
Yeah.
The security
How
risk.
is that different from Stack Overflow and every other way that we've gotten code that we didn't write?
Stack Overflow, they explain it though. You can read through the narrative of the problem and somebody, when it works.
Well, and ChatGPT does a good job of explaining code too. It's just not always correct.
It's not always correct.
Just like the folks on Stack Overflow.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair point.
Anyway.
So what's next for you, Karl? What's in your inbox? What are you working on?
I will continue working on this IoT application. And this is my main occupation right now. I'm there designing data structures and, a very flexible computation kernel, which can be changed on the fly. So where the code can be changed on the fly. So it is doing some background compilation of C#. And on the other hand, I'm still in my big industrial application where we've implemented a very large solution for our clients and different consulting tasks around. Like I'm doing consulting regarding NaturallySpeaking for some client and lots of stuff.
Very good. Well, definitely. Let's talk offline about making that your macro library available, because I imagine that people would really be interested in that. And also, if we don't have it in your bio, how can people get in touch with you?
Easiest way would be an email address, but I have to provide it to you first. There's a commenting feature on my website.
Yeah, I've included a link to Kobasoft, and there's a contact page there. It's probably the simplest.
Yeah, we'll do that. Very good. Karl Geitz, thank you very much. This has been very enlightening.
Yes, you're welcome.
All right. And we'll talk to you next time on .NET Rocks.
.NET Rocks is brought to you by Franklin's Net and produced by Plop Studios, a full-service audio, video, and post-production facility located physically in New London, Connecticut, and of course in the cloud. Online at pwop.com. Visit our website at dotnetrocks.com for RSS feeds, downloads, mobile apps, comments, and access to the full archives going back to show number 1. Recorded in September 2002. And make sure you check out our sponsors. They keep us in business. Now go write some code. See you next time. Got transmitter bands by the FCC. Yes, I'm a